Businesses in Melbourne are calling for extra financial support after the state's lockdown was extended by 7 days.
Joining us live now is Wes Lambert, Restaurant and Catering Australia Chief Executive Officer. Wes, look, it's been a disgrace, really, the way that Victoria and our hearts go to everyone there, like one of the centrepieces of hospitality in the world, not just this country.
Look, it's a disaster. Melbourne is considered to be the dining capital of Australia, and to have continued extended lockdowns is going to cost the accommodation food service industry $1 billion, and that's if it ends on the coming Thursday. If it's extended, it costs in excess of $500 million a week for the hospitality industry to be hamstrung like this.
We've seen the announcement this week by the federal government, Wes, the temporary COVID disaster payments, which will continue for future lockdowns anywhere in the country of more than 7 days. Can you give us an indication of what that is and how it's going to help people in the hospitality industry?
Look, it's a $500 payment to those who had over 20 hours a week pre the lockdowns, and it's $325 for anyone who had less than 20 hours a week pre-lockdowns. It's paid directly to the individuals. It's not paid through the businesses. And so it's a self-declaration for the individual to receive those payments. And the area must be designated a hotspot by the federal government, not just by the state government. And the costs of that disaster payment will be covered equally between the states and the federal government.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it, Wes? Is that, look, it's good that people are going to be compensated for not working, but the businesses themselves are absolutely gagging here. And the problem is that they can't, when they do get going again, they can't get staff. That's a national issue.
Oh, there's a workforce shortage in Australia. The accommodation food service industry is missing about 100,000 people that normally would work in the industry. And while we're doing everything we can to replace those individuals with onshore Australians, it does take time to skill them up. And certainly with traineeships and apprenticeships, it can take years and years before you become an experienced chef or restaurant manager.
So what are the solutions? Because we could have more lockdowns and we have to prepare for that. How do we prepare for that? We've got the grants, we've got the new grant with the liquor licence as well, if you can explain that one. But, we've got dine vouchers, which seem to be, enticing people to dine when they are out of lockdown. What else do we need?
Oh, look, the grants that have been provided by the state government are great. However, they will go nowhere to recovering the lost revenue of the businesses. For many medium and large-sized businesses, they barely cover a couple of days of rent. And so, certainly we appreciate the state government and the packages that they've released. However, the accommodation and food service industry is always the first and the hardest hit when lockdowns come. We have been the most restricted and affected industry in the country since the pandemic started, and we need to start learning to live with COVID. If we potter along in Victoria with 3, 4, 5, 6 community transmissions every day, are we going to stay in perpetual lockdown forever? It's just not acceptable that the state government, the federal government included, have not come up with a ironclad lockdown rules that don't allow us to stay under lockdowns with such low numbers. Many countries that have very high vaccination rates, they're dealing with tens or hundreds of community transmissions every day, but they don't lock down. They just continue to push through that vaccination strategy, and they're living with COVID.
It's madness, isn't it, Wes? This has to be the last lockdown in Victoria. It has to be, because they will cripple what they are. And the people around it. You can see the upset, and I think everyone completely empathises with people who are upset by it.
Look, we've had lockdowns in Australia now on average every 12 days since the 18th of November with the first snap lockdown in South Australia. And so it's certainly something that we have gotten used to, but unfortunately it is the first go-to in almost every state when there are a few community transmissions. We remember back to the beginning of COVID when we talked about flattening the curve and keeping people out of ICU beds. Well, the curve is absolutely flat, and there are very few, if any, people in the ICU beds around the country. But we do have to learn to live with COVID. We can't just come to a day in the future and say, okay, well, we're 60, 70% vaccinated, and so now the laws say you can't lock down. That's naive to think that. We do expect that the governments in each state where lockdowns have happened will continue to use that as a mechanism. Well, how are we ever going to reopen the international borders or expect that the state borders are going to remain open to each other?
And Wes, how satisfied are you with Victoria's contact tracing and QR codes?
Oh, look, it was the last state in the country that had mandatory state-based QR codes. Many other states, including New South Wales and their New South Wales Services app, certainly had that in place much sooner. The tracking and tracing is the foundation of a good COVID strategy. And certainly, finally, the state government of Victoria has one mandatory app, and hopefully that will speed up the process of contact tracing and stop the lockdowns.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? Wes, look, hopefully we'll talk soon about something brighter than what we spoke about today. And thanks for coming on our program this Sunday morning.
Thank you.